What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for a My Week With video. So first off, I apologize if I feel a little off. I'm slightly under the weather here, but I'm gonna push through, but I'm just not firing on all cylinders here. But so first thing about the Raptor here. So I already reviewed one back in 2017 whenever these first came out, and very little has changed for 2019, but there were some significant handling improvements that I thought were worth checking out, but didn't justify an entire video showing you every cup holder and every nook and cranny again, because none of that stuff has changed. So just wanted to do a video because the last one that I did review, I only had it for a few hours. This time I actually have been able to put 150 miles on this one over the course of a week and kind of have a better understanding of what it's like to live with a Raptor. And basically, it's really hard to not feel like a boss driving around this thing. I mean, you're so high up. You tower over most pickup trucks and stuff. It's just insane how high you are in this thing. And it's really fun, but it's also very intimidating. It's very hard to park. Like this one, so these start around $52,000, but this one as tested is around $72,000. Part of that is it has the 802A package, which is like $9,300, and that's the only way you can get the 360 camera, which is unfortunate because that is a necessity, at least to me personally. Like, it makes it a lot easier to drive and park this thing, in tight spaces and stuff whenever you have the forward-facing camera and you have the 360 view to kind of show you just how tight you are. I mean, obviously, you can do it old school, you can look in the mirrors and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's impossible to drive one of these if it's not fully loaded, but it certainly makes it easier, and it's a much nicer experience, I think. One thing, though, that's interesting about the Raptor here is the handling. So that's one of the main differences. One of the smaller differences here are these new Recaro seats, and this one has this color accent group, so it has the dark Alcantara inserts here, dark blue, with the outside, being blue, obviously. I think that will change depending on, what color the exterior is. And they're nice seats. They are pretty comfortable. They're heated and ventilated. And they have pretty good support, but it is still very wide. But I mean, that's what you would expect for a truck. You're not looking for race car seats in this thing or anything. So I think they're an improvement over the old seats, but I'm still not like in love with them or anything. But they do work well. Someone did ask me on Instagram about the ventilation of the seats, and that seems to work okay. Ford's kind of hit or miss. Like, some Mustangs are better than others, and the F-150s generally seem to be a little bit better, although they're not without fault, and some of them aren't great. This one seems to be okay. It's not going to get you freezing cold like some of the others. There's a few that do really good cooled seats. Like actually Kia and Hyundai do some of the best. Cadillac does very good cooled seats. These ones are kind of in the middle, a little bit mediocre, but still fine. And one nice thing though about this thing is it is so big that everyone does notice you, either for better or for worse, but it does help when you're driving because people can kind of see you coming up in their rearview mirror, and they're more likely to get out of your way, if they're left lane hogs and things like that. So there is some of that, which is definitely interesting, but it's just, again, you just feel like you're just really the king of the road in this thing, which is definitely a fun experience. But anyway, long tangent, getting back to one of the main new things here are these Fox internal bypass shocks, which are new here, and they also they're now electronically adjustable, so they can adjust depending on the terrain and the circumstances and stuff. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people are saying that these are going to feel a lot better in corners than the old Raptor, and that was one of the major downfalls of the Raptor. I mean, obviously it's an off-road focused truck. I'm not expecting it to handle like a sports car once again, but it was, even compared, I know there's some less intense off-road applications with other manufacturers in their trucks, like the Tacoma TRD Pro, Tundra TRD Pro, but then there's even some pretty intense stuff, like you have the Colorado ZR2, which obviously is smaller, lighter, so it's going to handle better just inherently. But that I did notice, even though it's super off-road ready, it did handle very, very well on the road. This still, to me, these shocks don't fix the handling, at least at lower speeds. I will say at high speeds, it seems a little less eager to be blown around. I was doing, some elevated highway speeds, and was driving, on the highway on some higher speed limit highways there, and it's very, very stable. I will say that this is a great cruiser truck if, that's what you're going for, is something to just cruise in and relax. That I think this does really great if you want to take it on a road trip. I think it actually is very nice for that, aside from the appalling fuel economy. It is, a great road trip vehicle, tons of space, all the luxury features. This one has the Bang & Olufsen stereo, which is optional. Speaking of the fuel economy, and me saying how it's disappointing though, that is one thing. So like I said, about 150 miles, and I will say it was probably a little bit more highway than city actually this time around. And so, these are rated 15 in the city, 18 on the highway, 16 combined. And I got 15.3, doing more than a 50-50 mix. So, I guess in the grand scheme of things, I'm only like maybe 1 mpg lower than I should really expect to be. But with that much highway, I was hoping to get a little bit better. I haven't really been hammering on this thing a whole lot. I did do a few full throttle accelerations, but actually been raining a good bit of the time. And so if I want to do an acceleration in 2-wheel drive mode, it just spins like crazy. And if I go to the automatic 4-wheel drive, I can do that, but that just takes a little more pre-planning. So I've usually just been taking it easier in this, but it does have a great amount of power. So I'm kind of slow down here a little bit, just give you a little sample of this engine note and the performance here. And it is very, very sweet. And one thing that did actually grow on me over my week of driving was the sound of this. I know everyone wants a V8. Hopefully that's coming. That's what the rumors seem to be suggesting, with possibly this getting the Shelby GT500 motor. But the sound isn't as awesome as some of the V8 offerings out there, but I will say this does sound pretty sweet, especially when you keep in mind this is the same engine that's in the Ford GT supercar, just detuned. And I think it sounds pretty good here. Now there might be some audio stuff helping it out here on the stereo, but overall I think it sounds good. It's still not as good as a V8, not even close, but independent of that expectation, I think this does actually sound pretty cool. And so performance is good. Again, it's not amazingly quick. It's probably about as fast as like a V6 Toyota Camry, to be perfectly honest. 5.2 seconds 0 to 60 is what they claim here. So it's not going to blow your mind. Obviously, if you want something fast, then you're spending 72 grand. You can, go up to a Shelby or at least a fully modified Mustang GT if you want. So obviously this is for people who want to go off-road and all that type of stuff, but it's also just a very large vehicle, so you have to make sure you're on a very wide open trail, and a lot of trails are pretty narrow, so it kind of limits how you can take this off-road. Now there are some better things. So even though the Fox shocks are new, they have the same travel as before. So I think it's like 13 inches in the front and 13.9 in the rear or something, so it definitely has lots of articulation and stuff still, and it does feel good, but and there's also a trail control system, which is also new for 2019, which is like cruise control, but when you're off-roading. So you can set it anywhere between 0 and 20 miles per hour, and it'll continue to vary the throttle and stuff to make sure you have the best grip possible, but help you kind of throttle manage as you're going over trails and stuff, which is cool. But I think that takes away some of the fun and excitement of doing it yourself, and some people just want to hoon around, they don't want to have perfect traction, and so but it's a cool feature nonetheless. So I went ahead and put it into the sport mode, and the first thing I noticed is throttle response gets sharper, steering gets heavier, and it's even pretty heavy even in comfort mode. But anyway, I'm going to go around a few corners here. They're very small, tight corners, but just to kind of see if the handling is a little bit better. And I have been testing this out a little bit over the course of the week, and there probably is a little bit less roll there. But again, we're talking about a truck that weighs roughly like 5,700 pounds, and most of that weight is up high, which is the exact opposite of what you want for a good handling vehicle. So that certainly, it doesn't help, and obviously the tires and stuff are not set up for any kind of on-road handling or anything. And so that's why, I still think there's a market for an SVT Lightning, an old, or like a redo of that, obviously not SVT anymore, but some type of Ford F-150 Lightning would be really cool. So to have a street-focused one, obviously the argument can be made, just go get a Mustang if you want, street performance. But, I think it's cool to have the truck capability, and to still have performance on road would be a cool idea. And, so maybe that's something they'll do someday. We'll have to see. I'm sure people would eat it up though, because I think it's very cool. The off-road, capabilities of this and stuff are very fun for sure. But me personally being an enthusiast, it certainly limits you. You have to take every corner slower. You have to think about every corner a little bit more. Kind of like how you do in a Wrangler or something, where you can't just go into it with the same type of mindset you do when you're driving a normal car. But that's okay. So just something you have to get used to. One other thing though I will say about these Fox bypass shocks is that they're still a little bouncy, and even on roads that seem to be smooth, I'm just bouncing for no reason. Like it definitely, likes to shudder and, shimmy over any little bump that you go over. And part of that's because it's a body-on-frame truck, but there are some other competing normal, full-size trucks that do it a little bit better than the F-150 in general. I noticed that even last year with the normal F-150 that I reviewed. It's a little bit of a bouncier ride, and that's the only thing that detracts from its daily drivability. Again, it's not horrible. I've lived with it just fine over the course of this week, but if you're spending 72 grand, there's some really luxurious stuff you can get. Obviously, it wouldn't have the off-road capability, and that's why people buy Raptors. But it's just worth noting that if you're just buying this to look cool in, there's other very nice luxury vehicles you can get for 72 grand and also look cool in that are going to be a little bit easier, as far as daily drivability goes. And so overall, the Raptor is definitely fun, and all the little complaints I have with it, at the end of all of them, you have to have the disclaimer of, but it's a Raptor, and you can't expect it to be amazing on road. You can't expect it to have, decent fuel economy. You can't expect it to make any sense whatsoever, because this is probably one of the most irrational vehicles on the market. There is really no good justification for it unless, again, you go off-road a lot and are doing the type of off-roading where this is well suited for that stuff. Something that, like high-speed stuff out in the desert or something like that. This makes a lot more sense than doing something on a small trail or something like that, where a Wrangler or something like that would be much better suited. There is one thing though that I can't give the excuse of it's a Raptor, and that is that the air conditioning just didn't work on one hot day that I was driving it. I had it, all the way on low for the coldest setting possible, and it was blowing lukewarm air at me. Since then, it seems to have been okay. So I'm not sure what the holdup is there, but I know that the Mustangs do have a history of having the AC compressor going out, and maybe that is a part that's shared with the Raptors here. I don't know if the F-150s have the same unit or not, but that just gave me a little bit of an iffy, feeling about the reliability of this. I mean, obviously air conditioning, you're not going to die if you don't have it, but those can be expensive to replace if it's out of warranty, so I would maybe suggest an extended warranty with one of these. But yeah, overall, the Raptor is, it's so overkill that it's hilarious fun. And obviously I like sports cars, and I like going around corners really quickly and fast performance and stuff, but I can appreciate why people love these, and I can now see why it's so much fun, because after just a quick drive I'm like, I don't really get it. But living with one for a week, now I kind of get it. Yeah, there are still some things that are a pain in the butt every day to live with, like the parking situation. But overall, I can certainly see the appeal of the Raptor. It is definitely fun, just in a different type of way. Same thing as the Wrangler or something like that. And so it's just a matter of what your personal preferences are. But overall, this thing is very, very sweet. So huge thanks to Ford for loaning me this Raptor here for a week to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the Raptor in the comments below. And like I said, any additional questions you have about any technical details of this vehicle, I probably covered in my review, and I will link that here at the end of the video. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.